I shaved, but I'm not going to spend the time showering so that this idea doesn't fall out of my head. I was thinking about a person writing or blogging, basically sharing text on the internet. And I'm thinking, I have been so used to the idea of a markup language that I I'm kind of offended at the idea of a WYSIWYG, a what you see is what you get editor, where everything is as close to the final audience facing result as possible while authoring something, while drafting something in the first place. And I'm thinking, well, why is that important? Why would that even be a good thing? I mean, it's a WYSIWYG editor, a fancy a GUI editor is to me something like um, simplifying, dumbing down, softening, mothering the idea of content creation. And I resist something there makes it less appealing for me to use a system like that. And I'm trying to learn more about myself and why I've got like what those feelings are exactly and how do I articulate them. And you do this sort of thing to see if you're maybe I'm out of date, maybe I don't fully understand, maybe there's some opportunity there that I'm too much of a grumpy old man to really get with the times and really take full advantage of it. Because I mean, I'm thinking about writing and I want to understand how. I want access to all of the tools that are available. And I think in terms of how I would present what I know to a young person. I understand myself fairly well, and I would understand a younger version of myself. So it's usually something like a younger version of myself that I'm mentoring as a way of going through, well, everything I know, kind of re educating myself. And I'm thinking, well, I would, for somebody who's creating content on the internet, always recommend a markup language. So if somebody was installing, like WordPress is a very, very common, well, it's a very common engine that's on the internet, unfortunately. And I would immediately recommend using directly using a markup language, not using its brand new iteration of a WYSIWYG fancy editor where you can drag and drop images and you can resize, so you can have text and font and columns and not. It isn't just that I think that way of doing things is unnecessary or anything like that. It's that it's actually harmful. And I think it's not just harmful in terms of audience reception, the end result being harmful, but for the actual drafting, the content creator experience. I think it's there's something just wrong about that. And I think it has to do with the chain that goes from the mind of the writer out to the mind of the reader. Because if you were to sit down, say you look at an article, and then you were to sit down at a coffee shop with a friend of yours, a good friend of yours, and you are an articulate person, dream the dream, right? And you know your audience, your friend very well, and your friend is an excellent listener and can understand you and has good comprehension. So there's no barriers or anything like that. It's not like talking to a stranger. It's not like you need to go through a whole kind of infrastructure setting things up to explain the topic, really. None of that. No language barrier, no understanding barrier, nothing. Let's keep it simple. Well, what value is there in having a really nice font on your article? What value is there? Because I can't sit there and talk to my best friend, and at no point would there be any reference to a font at all. At no point would there be references to how large the size of images are and what the layout is, the column width and the advertisements and the color scheme. I I can't actually convey any of that. So you might argue, well, all that is there to ease the reading or the reading comprehension of the person sitting down in the first place. Well, really? Like, do you really? I understand the argument of having a column, a tightened column, because the eye has problems reading from here to all the way over there and then back again, and you kind of lose what line you're on and stuff like that. But I mean, this is the nonsense on a page. You get this tiny little thing, you get all this other crap, and there you've got articles which are like 2 paragraphs and the giant picture, and maybe that picture is interactive and you can next through a slideshow of crap, and some pages have distracting stuff that's like ads that are related, like in the middle of stuff. And I understand a lot of that, but really, how valuable is that? How valuable is it to have the art in the way of the actual content? And I get helping a person with comprehension in the first place, but there has to be some balance point where it has to be recognized that it's unnecessary in the first place when writing to care about any of that stuff. Maybe after the fact it can be nudged around a little bit, but the idea of having this art in the way while doing content creation in the first place seems like a really bad kind of workflow. And I'm trying to imagine what would happen with a new writer. We're just going to say writer as a generic sense for like a blogger or whatever the heck. I'm trying to imagine what a new writer, what's happening in their mind as they write. If it were a completely plain text, if it were a reasonable markup language, and if it were a completely GUI thing. It's as though there's more and more barriers in the way to get to the actual text, from the person's mind out to the thing that they want to actually present. The actual quality and content of the text itself, which is what matters, because that's what a person in a coffee shop will sit down and try to convey to the next person. It's almost as though the original creator in the first place sits down and has to convey out into the text in the first place, and all that graphicalness is in the way. Like a WYSIWYG editor is just another barrier to get from creator to text, and then from text through another kind of graphical layer out to the recipient, and then from the recipient out into the crowd of the coffee shop to the person sitting there. Those all need to be as similar as possible. So I think I got the idea out in my head, and I'm not apologizing for the sunlight, ow, but I am going to end it.